Shanti. Sit still and gently take your awareness to yourself. I, the being of light, sitting behind the eyes of this body, I am very different from the world I live in. The pace, the rhythm of the outer world is different. The pace, the rhythm of the inner world is gentler, quieter, and slower. As I go within, I feel the calmness, the peace that lies within. I'm a peaceful star. Look at yourself. You are like a steady flame, very steady in giving off the light of peace. A still, peaceful flame you are. I, the soul, am absolutely still and stable. My energy is peace, and I'm constantly radiating that peace. I am my own personal source of peace. Do not need it from outside. As soon as I plug within, it is peaceful. I myself am peace. The inner world is very different from the outer world. There is stability, there is peace. Everything is gentle and slow here. Just sit anchored within for some time. Om Shanti. I often wonder what conditioning can do to a person, and this conditioning of body consciousness has actually taken us so away from our own original state of peace and stability. And yesterday I was talking to uh, one teenager, and because youth are in a different zone with regard to the digital world. Like, we interpret the digital world very differently from how they interpret it. And then that soul was trying to communicate to me how it is a matter of life and death if somebody dislikes your comment or dislikes something you post. And I couldn't get it because we keep posting all the time. So on YouTube we have everything, and then even if there is a dislike, it is okay because people are entitled to their opinion, and it is okay. So, but that person was trying to drive home a point that you don't know, this is opinion and this translates into something, and then whether you are popular or not popular means something. And I was completely not able to get it. And then I tried to think that, okay, this is very much like soul consciousness and body consciousness. So this is digital consciousness. So when you are digitally conscious, so that consciousness also puts you in a different zone. Just like when you are body conscious, then everything related to the body, however, uh, see, you are living in a world where everything is transient. So, and the way we perceive change as a matter of life and death in when we are in body consciousness can be very well compared to how people take to comments and likes and dislikes on the digital platform. So it's just how you have conditioned yourself. So I found this very interesting, that if you are in that zone, then everything means something to you. Now I will tell you, there are emojis on the WhatsApp application, and I don't know precisely what emoji stands for what. So sometimes, we just post the wrong emoji. So some emojis are very evident. So when you see them, you know what they mean. But there are some which you don't know what they mean. So I didn't know that actually they mean something very specific, and you can't just arbitrarily use emojis. So in the beginning, I had some trouble with that also, because I posted the wrong emoji somewhere, and then they thought that I'm upset with them or something. And then nowadays, when I have to post something, I have to go on Google and just paste that emoji and ask what is the meaning of this, and then Google lets me know, okay, this means this. So, or if somebody sends that emoji, I have to interpret it. So I was thinking about this whole issue of interpretation. So, you know basically, if you look at how Shiv Baba sees it, there is no meaning in anything. So you are born, you die. So being born is not good news, leaving the body is not bad news. So basically nothing has any meaning, it's just what it is. So there is an expression which says that it is neither good nor bad, it is just what it is. And then all the meaning that we assign to it, this happened and this was good, that happened and that was bad, and this was ugly and that was fair, and this was unfair and this was unjust, and this was ominous and this was auspicious. So all of these meanings that we assign actually belong to the body conscious world. So basically, in soul consciousness, There is only love, peace, purity, happiness, bliss, and power. So there are only these pure feelings, there are no emotions. So all other categories of emotions, they don't exist in the golden age and silver age. So you don't know what pleasure is, you don't know what sorrow is, you don't know what desire is. So there these emotions, you don't know what right wrong is or good bad is. So because there is complete acceptance, these concepts do not exist in the golden and silver ages when we are in our true shape and form. And later we come into these interpretations and these meanings to everything, and then we say this is loss, this is gain, this is failure, this is success. So basically nothing is anything, it is just what it is. And then you keep moving on that seesaw. So you get something, you say I gained, then something goes away, you say I lost. But then you can never be in a position where you have actually absolutely gained or absolutely lost. So there is nothing. So every second is changing, and then you are only calculating. So I will tell you that I knew somebody who was a goldsmith. So that person's had a jewelry shop, and he sold gold and silver ornaments. So then every day that person would say that घाटा हो गया, फायदा हो गया. So every day the rate is going up or down, or we are in profit or we are in loss. And then one day I asked that person, are you selling the shop? So they said no. So I said, you see, the gold is lying there, the silver is lying there. So if the rate escalates, you are not selling it all at a time. You are selling some 10, 20 pieces. So okay, your profit is that much. So it's not like, but there is a psychological profit that I suddenly became rich, and you start evaluating all the gold that you have. So I said, suddenly you revise your value by some crores. Jabki it's not like that. It's just that you sold a certain amount of gold and only that much of profit you made. But why do you think the rate of the whole shop has increased or decreased? So it is all in the mind. If you see, we keep calculating this loss, this gain, this success, this failure. Every meaning that we have assigned actually belongs to what we have done to assigning meanings to everything right from the copper age downwards. So I was just thinking about this in the morning. So I tend to share whatever I think about. So I shared it with you. And you are the first ones I meet in the day. So so you get to hear all that I've been thinking since morning. And then I want to talk about time and how everything is going right from the golden age to the iron age and then onwards to the confluence age. And today the context in which I want to talk about this is, I told you in an earlier session that there are primarily four or five types of souls, right? So first is the Devatma kind of soul, okay? So there are deity souls. So in this whole world, there are 33 crore souls who are deity souls. That is why you call them 33 crore Devi Devatai. So there are 33 crore souls who are deity souls. Right now, we are all wearing masks. Okay, so have you ever been to a party where everybody is wearing a mask? So it's very difficult to find out who is who. So in this world right now, there are 33 deity souls who are in ordinary masks right now. Okay, so nowadays everybody is wearing a mask physically also, so it's very difficult to know who is who. But otherwise, also, we are in a mask. So in this very world, there are 33 crores deity souls. Then there are the second kind of souls, which are the prophet souls, the ones we call dharmatmai. So these prophet souls are the souls who establish religion. So if you look at the picture that I sent you of the Srishti Chakra, from Dwapar Yuga onwards, there are many religions coming into force. So those religions are established by what we call the Dharmatmai, or the prophet souls. So when you talk about Jesus, when you talk about Buddha, when you talk about Abraham, when you talk about Muhammad, when you talk about Shankaracharya, when you talk about Guru Nanak Dev Ji, when you talk about Vardhaman Mahavir, they were all prophet souls. Okay. Then there is another kind of soul which we call Mahatmai, great souls. Okay, so there are great souls who also come into existence, like the like Raja Ram Mohan Roy or Mahatma Gandhi or Mother Teresa, and these people also work for the upliftment and betterment of society. So basically, they don't establish religion, but they work for the betterment of society in general. So these are the great souls, or the Mahatmai. Then there are other souls which neither are deity souls, nor do they establish religion, nor do they do anything great. They just come, they live, they eat, sleep, drink, be merry, and then they leave. So those are the ordinary kind of soul, you would call them, okay? The ordinary souls. And then there is the one of his kind supreme soul, Paramatma. So, and I also told you in that session that you never assign a plural to Paramatma. You never say Paramatmai, but you say Devatmai, Dharmatmai, Mahatmai, Atmai, right? So, this is it. Now, the thing is, right now, everybody is in an ordinary state. So, ordinary souls are also behaving ordinary. Deity souls have also become ordinary. Prophet souls have also become ordinary. So, although people will tell you that Buddha came and then Buddha established Buddhism and then he left, that is, he went to Mukti, Baba says nobody goes back. So once you come, you don't go back until the whole world comes to its ultimate stage of depletion. So you keep taking rebirth. So just like deity souls kept taking rebirth, you and I are one of the deity souls presumably right now, and we took rebirth, and just like we are here right now, similarly Buddha came some 2250 years back, and Buddha also kept taking rebirth after that. Christ kept taking rebirth after that. And as far as my knowledge goes, in Christianity, it is also mentioned that Christ is present in the form of a beggar right now. So they don't talk about Christ going back. So when we talk about beggar, it actually means we have come from the giver state to the Mangta state. So just like I told you, this hand goes like this after some point of time. So that is the beggar state. So everybody has become a beggar right now. So we have stopped being givers or deities and we have become beggars. So everybody, every soul comes at a different time, but then once they come down, they can't go back from the middle. So they have to be there until the end of the drama. So if you compare this to the normal drama that is enacted on stage, so you see every actor, they need to be present in the green room when the drama starts, and then they come to the stage only when it is their time to perform, and then they can't just pack up and leave before the whole drama is over, because when the whole drama finishes, everybody has to come on stage. The director also has to come on stage, and they all have to bow down and then leave. So, similarly, in this drama also, nobody can come play their part and leave. No. You can come at different times because the population is increasing gradually. So, not so the green room is the soul world. Okay. So, we are all in the green room. Then everybody's performance starts at a definite time. So, you come down at that time and then you stay here until the whole show is over. That is, until we come to the end of Kali Yuga, nobody is allowed to leave in between. Okay, so this is how it goes. Now, there is a time for deity souls to come. So, what is that time? The time is Satyug and Treta Yuga. So, I yesterday told you that in the beginning of Satyug, the population is approximately 9 lakhs. And at the end of Treta Yuga, that is at the end of 2500 years, the population is 33 crores. So we all keep coming, the deity souls, we also don't come at once, but we keep coming slowly, gradually, and then up to the end of Treta Yuga, all deity souls have come down. All right. Now, when do you think you will come? In the beginning, or somewhere in the middle, or in the somewhere in the beginning of Treta Yuga, or in the middle of Satyug, or in the beginning of Satyug? Where will you come? So the question is, how will I know where I will come in that whole cycle? So now there is a law, and the law is the quality of the soul and the quality of the universe have to match. Prakriti or Purush ka combination. Purush is the soul and Prakriti is nature. So you see, when this whole world cycle again starts, it will start from being 100% pure and will slowly, gradually keep depleting with every passing second, right? Now, right now, what are you doing? You are trying to achieve your highest state of purity. All right. Now, suppose you become 100% pure before leaving the body. Now, when will you leave the body? Okay, so now the whole question is this. So there was this saint, and he told somebody that you only need to remember God 5 minutes before you leave the body. Okay. So this person said, all right, that shouldn't be difficult because 5 minutes I can remember God. And then the guru left. Now the person thought, okay, 5 minutes before leaving the body, I have to remember God, and that is not a difficult task. But how do I know when I will leave the body? So then he went after the guru and asked, when will I leave the body? So the guru said, that I don't know. So you have to remember God before 5 minutes, 5 minutes before you leave the body, and you may leave the body anytime. So you may leave it in the next 5 minutes. So you start remembering God from right now. Okay, so this is the whole question. So we have to become completely pure before we leave the body. Now, I don't know when I'll leave the body. So maybe I leave the body next second, maybe I leave the body 1 hour later, maybe I continue to live in this body for another 50 years. So what I have to do is I have to be ever ready. Okay, ever ready. That is, I never have to miss any chance of staying in my purest state, because I may leave the body whenever time calls me, or it is time for me to leave the body. Very interesting one. So there was this fellow who knew that you should remember God in your last breath. So, Gandhiji said Ram before he left the body, and there are other people who say that गंगा का जल मुख में हो, गंगा का तट हो, और तब प्राण तन से निकले. तो you should always have God in your heart and in your mouth and in your words when you leave the body. Now, the thing is, this person also knew this age old wisdom. So, what he did is he said, okay, I perhaps don't have such a good relationship with God, but then I love my children. So, what I will do is I will name my children after deities. So one child I will name Ram, another one I will name Vishnu, another one I will name Shiv, another one I will name Durga. So I will name all my children after deities, so that when I leave my body, I will remember my children. So when I call them out, so I will automatically remember God. So he devised this shortcut formula. And then what happened? He was lying on his deathbed and he called out to all his children. And in doing so, he also remembered God because he was calling out to all of them. And when all of them came and sat beside him on the bed, he said, "Oh my God, all of you came at once. You should have come one at a time. The shop is open." So you left the shop and you're all sitting here, and somebody would steal something from the shop. And then this person left the body the moment he said that. So the thing is, he did not even remember his children in his last breath. He remembered the shop because he was very attached to the money he was earning. So the thing is, if you do not train yourself in detaching from everything and just becoming self aware and in the remembrance of Baba while living in this body and while living every breath in this body, then you cannot ensure that you have Antmate Sogati, which means in your last breath you will not remember Baba and you will not be pure and you will not end up in the pure world. So that is why we have to remember Baba every second. All right. And the one who becomes completely pure, 100% pure, will come when the Prakriti is 100% pure. So that is in the beginning of Satyug. And if while leaving the body, you are 80% detached but 20% attached, okay, so then when do you come? When the Prakriti comes down to 80% of purity. So a little later. And then if you are 50% in the world and 50% with Baba while leaving the body, then you come down at 50%. Okay. So this is all a game of what you do in the last breath. So this is why you people are very fortunate. Why? Because you have come at a time when it is almost the end. And you can see the state of affairs. So now if you just stay consistent for a little while, okay, maybe 5 years, 10 years, whatever, so you can leave the body in Baba's remembrance and directly go to the purest of the pure world. All right. Now we all come, all the 33 crore souls which will make this effort right now will be coming at different points of time depending on this law. Is it clear now? All right. So then up to Treta Yuga end, we will all come down. Then we will all, what we will do is we become body conscious after that. Now, why do we become body conscious? Because when Baba comes, he gives you the varsa or the birthright or the legacy for 21 births. He doesn't give you an earning beyond 21 births. Have you heard the significance of this 21 births earlier? People say, कन्या वो जो 21 कुल का उद्धार करे, है ना? People say anybody, so a good daughter or a good lady would actually we would actually make sure that 21 births of well-being are ensured. Okay, so who are those kanyas, who are those kumaris who will ensure the well being of 21 births? You, Brahma Kumars and Kumaris, who will now do the seva and tell people how to create their fortune for 21 births, right? So, what is this 21 births? One birth is this, the one you're sitting in. And in Satyug, in the 1250 years, there are 8 births. And in Treta Yuga, in those same 1250 years, there are 12 births. So these are the 21 births that we talk about. So when Baba comes and you follow his Srimad, you earn an income which will last you for 21 births. That's it. After that, you are on your own. After that, we are on our own. And then when Dwapar Yuga comes, we we have lost this whatever we had earned, and then because we have taken 21 births and already we have come into motion, the soul has come into motion, so some of its power is lost, and then we start getting body conscious. And when we start getting body conscious, then what we do is, just like I gave you the example of a person who has lost his leg and he depends on the stick. So, what do? We lose our inner power and we start depending on our ego. So, what is ego? Vastu, Vyakti, Vaibhav. Things, people, and accomplishments. Titles, labels, everything. Okay. So we start depending on these to give us a sense of identity. And when we start doing that, then we start collaborating with that which is changeable and destructible. So when you join hands with something that is always in a state of flux, what happens? You also start becoming very unstable. And when you start becoming unstable, you experience fear, you experience insecurity, you experience sorrow, you experience loss, gain, everything. And when that happens, you call out to God. And then what happens is, prophet souls come. Okay, so God doesn't come because that is not the time for God to come. Just like just like Satyug is the time for deity souls to come, Dwapar Yuga is the time for prophet souls to come down. So who comes first? Abraham comes first, and Abraham came 2500 years ago, and then comes Buddha. And Buddha came approximately 2250 years ago. It could be 50 years here or there, but that is the precise time. And then Christ came 2000 years ago, right? And so every major religion was formed during that time, because we started experiencing sorrow, and deity souls having fallen down, they couldn't help themselves, so we needed prophet souls to guide. So this happened in the Western world. And what happened here? So we started creating shastras. So Mahabharata, Gita, Ramayana, everything was written in a period of 2500 years to 2000 years back. If you look at recent researches, they very well validate this finding. Okay, so we started creating scriptures, we started creating a code of conduct which can guide us. And in the Western and Eastern worlds, what happened is, prophet souls came and they started guiding people. Now, what was the message given by all of these? So, the message given by all of these was, change your actions. Yes, everybody said, change your actions, change how you behave. If you see Buddha, he said, follow the eightfold path. Right? Christ said, embrace love and mercy in your dealings. Abraham said, प्लीज गो बाय व्हाट द होली बुक सेज. अल्लाह मालिक है, हम उसके बंदे हैं, है ना. फॉलो व्हाट गॉड सेज. व्हाट डिड द स्क्रिप्चर्स टीच अस? If you look at Gita, what does Gita tell you? Gita tells you that you should always follow your dharam, right? So because at that time we were body conscious, so we thought that dharam means if I am a Hindu, I should continue being a Hindu. And then Gita says follow your caste duty. So everybody should do their caste duty. So we thought a Brahmin should read scriptures, a Vaishya should trade, a Kshatriya should go to war, and a Shudra should clean everything. So we thought that these are the castes, so we have to go by our caste duty. And then we thought that Gita is about an actual war. So we actually gave very much of strength to these words, like righteous anger and righteous fight and fighting for righteousness. But we never thought, why would the right fight? So if you are right, you never fight. And you fight, you are not right. Okay, so these are the confusions which took place because it was only about doing, it was not about being. Okay, then what did the Ramayana teach you? Ramayana taught you how to be a good king, how to be a good wife. I don't know whether it taught how to be a good husband, but whatever, it taught how to be a good wife, how to be good children, how to be a good brother, or how to be a good king, or how to be a good son. So that is what the Ramayana taught us about. But the thing is, because the soul was powerful at that time, so if you were given a set of do's and don'ts, you could follow it, right? So if it was said in the Ramayana that Sri Ram was Purushottam and he listened to Dashrath ji and he went to exile because his mother wanted him to. So you being an obedient son is your highest duty, and you should go to exile even if you find that is not the right thing to do. Okay, so you hear that Kekai actually connived against Sri Ram, but then Sri Ram anyways went because being a good son was above discerning whether somebody is plotting or planning or it is being done in good intention. So this was the kind of obedience that was taught in Ramayana. Now the thing is, at that time the soul had power. So because it was 2500 years back, so the soul still had power in it. So if you told a soul to be a good son, they could do it even if it did not fit into their logic or common sense or anything. They could still do it because they had the power, right? But now, today, if I tell you that you are in the same situation as Sri Ram and you have a stepmother who wants you to leave the kingdom or leave the house because she wants her son to be the king in your place, and you just do it by blind obedience, would you choose to do it? Or would you think that this is the right thing to do? Okay, so this is all about it. So basically, sometimes people ask me that why do we have to read the Murli, or why do we have to listen to Gyan when already there is so much of Gyan available in Hinduism, especially. But the thing is that all these scriptures are all about values, and values stem from who you are in a role or as a body. So Values are never related to the soul. Values are related to the role. So you say, who is a good boss, who is a good father, who is a good son, who is a good daughter, who is a good wife. But when you talk about a good wife, the whole the whole question of being a good wife collapses when you don't have a good husband. Okay, so values are dependent on both parties following the values. And that is why this whole structure was unsustainable after a short time. Because you continued to be Ram, but then Dashrath didn't continue to be Dashrath, or Dashrath continued to be Dashrath and the Ram ceased to be Ram. So then how do you become the Dashrath when there is no Ram? Or how do you become a Sita when there is no Ram? So when it is shown that when it is shown that Sri Ram wanted to be a good king, and that is why Sita had to sacrifice all of her pleasures and all of everything, and she also had to give an examination, or she had to put to test her purity, because Sri Ram wanted her to do that, because he wanted to set an example for the kingdom. So okay, so far so good. If you are a good king, I can support you that way. But today, the same woman is expected to do the same thing for a person who is not interested in the well being of his kingdom but is having an extramarital affair. And then that person expects this woman to be a Sita, whereas he is nobody close to Ram. So then, how do you reconcile this whole dilemma? This is what is happening today. So I have this thing against the way we celebrate Women's Day. So I whenever we celebrate Women's Day, there is always this talk about women should be like Sri Lakshmi and women should be like Sita. So I asked them, so by Sri Lakshmi, you mean that there is only one picture of Sri Lakshmi which we have seen, and what is that picture? That Vishnuji is sleeping and Lakshmiji is just pressing his legs, so giving him comfort. So is that the kind of image you want to portray about Sri Lakshmi, or is it something else? So Lakshmi is sitting by the feet of Sri Vishnu, and then you want every woman to be that. But okay, every woman can be that, but then every man has to be Sri Narayan. So if Lakshmi ji is doing that, then Vishnu ji is supposedly running the universe at that time by his thought. But then now Vishnu ji is only sleeping. He is not running the universe, and then Lakshmi ji is cooking all day in the kitchen. So that is not a fair state of affairs. So this is the problem here. Now the thing is, parents come to me and say that children in the earlier times were not like children today. So they say that we were very obedient and we were like this and we were like that, and our children are not like that. So I ask them, are you the parents that your parents were? So your children are not children like you were. But then you had parents who were different from you. The way you are parenting and the way they parented was very different. Right? So I remember our parents at our time never fretted about what marks we got. Did they ever fret about it? They never fretted about it. If you didn't speak for a year after you were born, they had no problems. They never said, ye gunga hai. They said, हाँ ठीक हो जाएगा, हाँ ठीक हो जाएगा. 5 years the child is not speaking, हाँ ठीक हो जाएगा. They had so much of patience. And then after 10 years, the child speaks, and he speaks like anything else, because the parent is completely accepting of whatever the child is. But these days, if a child speaks a little late, I'm just talking about 7 days later than the child who was born with him is speaking. 7 days. And the parent has given 7,000 thoughts about my child is slower, he is a slow learner, and I need to take him to the speech therapist, and there is some problem with the child. So then these things that we are doing is actually exacerbating the whole problem, because you are paying too much attention to the imperfection. So, this is the whole issue. The issue with values is you can stick to your values if the other party sticks to his values. But when there is a breach of contract in either one of them, because you cannot be a teacher without a student in context, you cannot be a wife without a husband in context, or you cannot be a husband without a wife in context, you cannot be a parent without a child in context. And if the context is not okay, how do you stick to your values? All right, so this is the problem with the value system that religion designed for us. This is why when we come, this is why even considering the fact that these religions were always in place. So for 2500 years, we have had scriptures, we have had guidance about everything. But there are two factors because of which we are still going lower and lower in consciousness. One factor is that because of this value system and breach in contract, and the second factor is because the soul is losing its power. So when you lose your internal power, your capacity to adhere to your value system is lost. Okay, so even if somebody says you stick to your value system, even if the other person doesn't, you don't have enough capacity to do that, because you, the soul, are depleted. And you want approval, you want appreciation, you want love, you want peace, you want happiness, and you are not getting it from anywhere, because that is what you're made of, and now that is in low energy. So this is why God has to come at the end. Because dharmatma and religion were not enough to uplift us from that place. And God never talks about values, He only talks about virtues. Okay? He never talks about what you do as a wife, as a mother, as a father, as a husband, or as a child. He talks about you as a soul. And he says, you are a soul, and you need to first recharge from me, because you are depleted. So it is not your mistake that you are weak, you are just depleted. So early in the morning, you sit in soul consciousness, pay attention to who you are, who your father is, which land you belong to, and recharge yourself. And then you just take care of some things, which is you stay peaceful, you stay loveful, you stay happy, because that is about you, that is not about your role. And this is what you need to do for yourself, not for anybody else. It is not about right or wrong. It is about you staying in your own power. And you should choose to stay in your own power, so that nobody can take over you and you are not influenced by anybody. Okay, so this is why we need God, because God talks to the soul. Everybody else on the planet talks to the body and the role. Okay, so nobody looks at you as a soul, they always look at you as a woman or a man. They always look at you as a child or a middle aged or an elderly. Otherwise, which religion you belong to. So a Sikh is a Sikh, they are not human beings. So we always say there were 4 people and 1 Sikh. So You address them like that, right? So there was one with a pagdi and there was four other people. So is he not a person? He's also a person. So there were five people, but then you always tend to identify and segregate people like that. And sometimes you say there were four people and there was one Muslim. So what does that mean? That Muslim is not a person or what? So we make these distinctions, or we'll say there were four people and there were two children. So those children are also people. So why do you have to use this kind of a distinction? So you just use the expression that everybody is a soul and there were five souls. That's it. What kind of body they were in, or what religion they were practicing, or what clothes they were wearing, or what age they were in, doesn't matter. And your behavior, your thought process also doesn't matter on the doesn't depend on the context. You have to stay peaceful anyway, you have to stay loveful anyway. It doesn't matter who you are with, because this is your duty towards yourself as a soul. It is not based on the role that you're performing. Okay, so this is why we need God despite there being so many religions, because religion can only guide us in the context of the body, not in the context of our true identity. Okay, am I clear about this? Okay. Now, tomorrow we will talk about how this cycle identically repeats, and the question of free will and predestined we will take up tomorrow. All right. Now, let me take up the questions. Jesus, being a pure soul, why would he take rebirth as a beggar? Because once you come to this birth, you create karma, and then you come into the karmic cycle. So just rebirth, right? So because when you create karma, then it creates an account, and then because of that account you have to take rebirth. So when you are born from a parent, then if nothing, you have to just come to repay the debt of those parents, because you can give it to your children, you can't give it back to your parents, right? So this is how the cycle of karma continues. So once you come onto the planet, you keep creating karmic bondages, and in order to, I told you why we take rebirth and all. So when we leave the body, it is to settle the karma created in the last birth that we take rebirth, and this cycle continues. Okay, how do we become Hindu? So we will talk about this probably day after tomorrow when I talk about the CD. So there was one religion and how it got bifurcated, we will talk about that. So today I will just tell you that this word Hindu comes from the fact that we lived beside the Sindh Nadi, and Sindhis स को ह बोलते थे, so we started calling ourselves Hindu. So actually this whole term Hindu comes from a geographical location. Okay, so that is why we say hum Sanatan Dharmi hai, which means we belong to the deity religion, but we don't call ourselves deities because we are nothing like deities right now. So we have a faint memory, but then we call ourselves Hindu because we can't call ourselves deity considering the kind of karma we do. Okay. Rig Veda is considered as oldest manuscript around 1200 BC. So we will talk about all of these scriptures. Okay. Didi, as we are getting gyan and by practicing our soul consciousness, we will be able to leave the body in this life only because we are using our body. Yes, we will leave the body, so you will use it until you stop using it. Okay, so there will be a time when you will not have to use the body anymore, and then we will leave the body. And it's not about whether we will leave the body, because everybody has to leave the body, but how we will leave the body. Okay, in what state we will leave the body. So for a spiritual practitioner, leaving the body is a sacred act. So you don't want to miss your death. You want to live very consciously and in a very good state, right? So people miss their death when they die in an accident or somewhere, but in spiritual practice, you don't want to miss your death. You want to leave the body in a very conscious manner, and you want to be very self aware and be in a very good state when you leave the body. Without fear, without anguish, you want to leave the body, and you want to be very aware of where you end up in the next body. Okay, so this is about spiritual practice, because you are a soul, and a soul never dies, only leaves the body. So leaving the body is different from death. So you don't experience death, you don't experience that whole act as death, you experience it as leaving the body, which is a very smooth process. Okay. So, and if time permits, you can also call your relatives and phone them that I'm going to leave the body, and you, if you want to be around, you come over. So, so you want to be so aware that don't leave the body by chance. You leave it in complete awareness, and you come to have a sense of it beforehand. And you know of people who do that. So you must have known somebody in your circle who got an idea that they are going to leave their body before they left their body. So they kind of told you that I may not be there tomorrow, and आप अपना ध्यान रखना also. There are some people who do that. So if you are in a lot of touch with your inner self, you will come to know when it is time, and you can be very aware when you leave the body. Okay? Chalo, let's meditate. Sit quiet and gently become aware that I am a soul. My religion is peace and love. All my thoughts, all my words, all my acts, despite the time and context, are filled with this energy of peace and love. I think in peace, speak in peace, and act in peace. I am peace. Just create a script for your day where you see yourself doing everything in peace. When you stand up from the chair after this class, you do it very peacefully. When you talk to a person, you do it with love, with peace. When you walk, you are gentle with your feet. You may be fast, but your walk is peaceful and loveful. When you see someone, it is with this energy of love and acceptance. This is you. This is your religion. This is who you are. You make sure you stay true to yourself. It is not about anything or anyone else. It is about my Swadharma, my religion, about myself. Let me sit in this consciousness for some time. Om Shanti.